Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, howdy folks, hope you're all enjoying your weekend and welcome to Total War 3 Kingdoms by Creative Assembly. Yes, another Total War game. Creative Assembly have been pushing this formula for the best part of 20 years now. And at its heart, this game series hasn't really changed an awful lot in that entire time. Sure, there are different variations on theme. We've had Total War Rome, Attila, Napoleon. We've had Total War Warhammer, but at its heart, the core game mechanics have always remained the same. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Total War veterans know what they like, and they like what they bloody well know. And Creative Assembly have consistently delivered on that formula, with variations, obviously, in theme, content and setting, but pretty much since 2000's Shogun Total War, the core gameplay mechanics have remained more or less exactly the same. And it's more of the same in the Chinese-inspired Total War 3 Kingdoms, except for when it isn't. Because while it isn't completely fair to say that Total War 3 Kingdoms is two different games under the same hood, there are two very different ways of playing Total War 3 Kingdoms, only one of which is what you may expect from a Total War game. For the purists and the Total War veterans who know what they like and like what they bloody well know, you can play through the Total War 3 Kingdoms campaign in exactly the same way as every other Total War title released to date. On the other hand, if you're a fan of movies like The House of Flying Daggers, or books like The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which, yep, the clue's in the title, this is exactly what this particular Total War title is based on, there is another way of playing through the campaign. You can play the campaign in Romance mode, and several new options that you haven't really seen before in a Total War title become available. You see, if you play the game in Romance mode, it's mostly about the heroes rather than the armies. And when you're talking about historical Chinese heroes from the era of the Three Kingdoms, history and mythology tend to get a little bit blurred around the edges, and that's where the magic happens. The heroes in Total War 3 Kingdoms are distinctly larger than life, just like their historical Chinese counterparts. And it's this aspect of Total War 3 Kingdoms that I'm going to mostly be talking about in today's video, because it's what sets Total War 3 Kingdoms apart from previous Total War titles. And yeah, I'm probably going to get the names wrong.
It is quiet here, brother. Too quiet for my tastes. Something feels wrong. Shh! There! Movement in the tree line. An ambush is imminent. We must be ready. If we cross the river, we could escape through the southern gates. Or we could attempt to survive the ambush through force of arms. This hill would make a good defensive position en route, should more forces arrive. Prepare for battle, brother, and may your blade strike true!
So, while you're enjoying my mostly cack-handed attempts to survive the initial ambush in this Total War demonstration battle that I played at Creative Assembly's HQ in Horsham, let's talk a bit more about those heroes. You've had hero characters and units available in the Total War games right from the start, whether they be gentlemen spies or inventors in Total War Napoleon, or ninja assassins in Shogun Total War. Here in the Three Kingdoms, however, they're taking it not just one, but several steps further. For a start, your heroes can of course lead your armies, in exactly the same way as they always have been able to do. But heroes in the Three Kingdoms can belong to one of several different types of character classes. For example, the hero that I currently have selected, Sun Ren here, is a Vanguard character, which means she's much more useful in direct combat with the enemy. By contrast, her brother, Sun Quan, is a commander character class, and this is more of your traditional type of Total War army general, and as you'd expect, you're better off having him with the bulk of your troops so they can gain all kinds of bonuses from being near to him. And these are just two of the dozens and dozens of different characters that are going to be available in the game, some of which will belong to you by default because historically they were part of the faction that you are playing, and some of which are going to be available for hire, thanks to a system which we'll address in slightly more detail in a moment. But the important thing to bear in mind here is that all of these hero characters are based on actual historical Chinese characters from the period of the Three Kingdoms, and they all have relationships with each other. Sun Quan and Sun Ren here, for example, are brother and sister. And what that means is that if they're together in a battle and one of them dies, the other one is going to go absolutely berserk for 2 minutes and become a near unstoppable killing machine. And this will also permanently alter the relationship that the surviving sibling has with whichever character killed their brother or sister. You see, the hero characters in Three Kingdoms have long memories, and the consequences of your actions and the interactions between the various different heroes affect how they react to each other. And this can have consequences in one of the other systems that they've introduced in Total War Three Kingdoms, and that's the duel system. Hero characters can challenge each other to duels on the battlefield. Now, the results of these duels aren't necessarily going to be automatically fatal for one of the two combatants. It's going to depend on the relationship between those two characters. For example, if Sun Ren is killed in battle, and Sun Quan gets the opportunity to duel whichever character killed her, that's probably going to be a fight to the death. But you may end up in a situation where you have characters who historically grew up and trained together, but have ended up fighting for different factions during the course of the civil wars that marked the Three Kingdoms period. And if they find each other on opposite sides of a battle, a duel between these characters is almost certainly not going to be to the death. Now, I mentioned earlier that the choice of characters that are going to be available to you are initially going to be determined by whichever faction you've chosen to represent. Some characters just started off belonging to certain factions, but there are a huge number of other characters that are available, not necessarily tied to an existing faction, or who hadn't even been born at the start of the Three Kingdoms period. New characters are going to be available for recruitment at certain points in something that I believe Creative Assembly are calling the character flow system. Think of it as a recruitment pool for the various different heroes and characters that populate the game. You can recruit heroes from the character flow, but so can all of the other factions, and if you don't snap them up, maybe you can't afford to snap them up, somebody else will. And you will probably end up facing them on the opposite side of a battlefield. But it's this character flow system that goes to the heart of what it is that makes Total War Three Kingdoms so substantially different from every other Total War game that's preceded it. You see, so far we haven't talked about spies, we haven't talked about assassins, we haven't talked about governors, administrators, all of the other different types of characters that have been available in previous Total War games. There's none of that in Three Kingdoms. All of these heroes, whether they're available to you by default from the start of the campaign or whether you've hired them through the character flow system, all of these heroes can be employed as either generals, governors, administrators, assassins, or spies, depending on how you think you can make best use of their abilities. There are no dedicated general, governor, administrator, spy, or assassin characters in Total War Three Kingdoms. Although it goes without saying, a character that's particularly good at commanding troops in battle should probably be employed as a general. But a character that's good at commanding troops for you is going to be good at commanding troops for anybody, and is going to be an equally attractive hire for whichever faction manages to get them first. But the faction that manages to get them first doesn't necessarily have to use them to command troops in battle. Let's say, for example, you do get access to a character that is a great general. You don't have to assign them to an army. You can instead, if you're feeling particularly sneaky, stick them back in the character flow system, where they will be recruited by an enemy faction, and very probably put in charge of one of those enemy faction's armies. But they still work for you. That character is now your agent, embedded into the enemy army. And if you end up facing that character on the battlefield, for example, because you've just gone to war with that faction, he can bring that army over to your side. The same thing goes for city governors. Picture the scene. You're advancing on an enemy stronghold, and they have a city holding the mountain pass, beyond which lies the entire enemy kingdom. It's imperative that the enemy hold that city, because it commands the mountain pass. What the enemy leader does not know is that the governor of that city is actually your agent. And on your command, the governor opens the city gates and hands control of the city over to you without a fight. There's never been anything like this in a Total War game before, and it's this aspect of the game that I find the most entertaining, particularly because it also works just like this in the multiplayer campaign. So just think about this for a minute. You're playing Total War 3 Kingdoms in romance mode, multiplayer campaign, against a friend. That friend has just hired a character that they really like the look of. What they don't know is that that character is one of yours that's been inserted back into the character flow system and is now a spy working for you against your friend. Now what you can actually do with that character is going to depend entirely on how your friend chooses to employ that character. There are going to be a range of different spying options available for you. Of course, every time you exercise any of these spying options, you run the risk of blowing your spy's cover. It may actually be the wisest choice to simply leave the character as an agent in place and let your friend continue to lavish attention on what may end up becoming their favourite character, all the while blissfully unaware that their new favourite character actually belongs to you. And you're just biding your time and waiting for the right moment when it's going to be the most beneficial for you and the most embarrassing for your opponent to find out that their favourite character was working for you all along. Or you can conduct a broad range of spying options with the character while it's embedded in the enemy faction. Conscious of the fact that each time you do this, there's a chance that your character's cover is going to be blown and they're going to be exposed as one of your agents. Now if this does happen, the player who's exposed that agent has a range of options available to them. They can execute them on the spot, they can ransom them back to you, or, and this is the part I really love, they can turn them as a double agent and then pretend to ransom them back to you, in effect making you pay to have one of their agents embedded in your army. So you think you've got your agent back, and you sort of have, but it's not really your agent anymore. But never forget that while all of this does sound like fantastic fun, and I'm sure all of you amateur Machiavellis are out there rubbing your hands with glee, just picturing the kind of chaos you can inflict on your opponents, using this character flow system to insert your heroes into enemy armies and stab them in the back and twist the knife when it's guaranteed to cause the maximum grief. Do not forget, this can all be done to you too, okay? And that's why I have every confidence that Total War 3 Kingdoms multiplayer campaigns are going to be where friendships go to die. Just do not play this game with your friends. Not if you want to keep them as your friends. Of course, you don't have to do any of this. You can just play it as a regular Total War game, not in romance mode, and dispense with the whole hero system entirely. But, I mean, seriously, where's the fun in that? Personally, I will definitely be playing this with all of these options on, because it sounds absolutely hilarious. So who's up for a game of Three Kingdoms multiplayer? What? You can trust me, I have an honest face. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for today. Have yourselves a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.